ECOWAS sets subcommittee to look into Nigeria border closure. Egypt's inflation surprise dims rate cut hopes with third uptick. Oil crisis in Libya takes center stage at latest UN talks. Hello and welcome, and thank you for joining us on Business Incorporated. I'm Chimeze Obi Iwagu. Beginning with intraday numbers, the new week looks bright for the market here in Nigeria as the index looks set to start the week on a positive side. The oil share index was up 0.13% at intraday, but its counterpart in South Africa, the JSE index, was down 0.53%. In Egypt, the EGX 30 was down 0.95%. Kenya closed to negative on Friday. And in the Middle East, the Qatari index was the sole loser amongst other major markets, extending losses to a third session. The Gulf's largest lender, Qatar National Bank, sank 4.3% as its shares traded ex-dividend, while Industries Qatar slipped 0.4%. The overall index was down 0.51%. The Saudi Arabia's benchmark index, on the other hand, eased 0.06%, with oil giant Saudi Aramco and National Commercial Bank shedding 0.9% each. The index fell for a fourth straight session, partly dragged by weaker oil prices as the coronavirus epidemic that has killed more than 900 people in China threatened demand from the world's largest importer of oil. In the UAE, the Abu Dhabi index edged up 0.6%, supported by First Abu Dhabi Bank and Emirates Telecommunications, which were up 0.1% and 0.3%. Dubai's benchmark stock index rose 0.47% as Air Arabia leaped 6.7%, the biggest intraday gain since July 2014. In Europe, markets traded slightly lower this morning amid ongoing concerns around the coronavirus outbreak in China. But there are other developments catching investors' interest. Let's talk to Ulrich. A very good afternoon to you, Ulrich. Let's begin on Germany's political landscape. The chair of the CDU party has announced her resignation. What does this mean for Chancellor Angela Merkel and for the business and stock market world?
Well, it's a totally new picture. It's perhaps not totally unexpected, but it was a total surprise at this time coming the way it did. You can see that just a little bit in the DAX. You mentioned the coronavirus. Yes, that's also playing a role in the uncertainty and the nervousness of the markets. But around where the DAX dips down for the first time for the day, that was around the time that first bit of news came, reports, not confirmed yet, that Annegret Kramp-Karrenbauer was going to be stepping down from her post as leader of the CDU, the Christian Democratic Union, and then also not gaining any, not claiming any sense in becoming the chancellor candidate of the party in the next election. And the market taken by surprise, basically everyone in Germany at this point. And then people caught their breath again. People in the market, I think, speculating, oh, this might be good news. Maybe something could go forward now, because there was a feeling that there's been paralysis since this governing coalition of CDU and SPD took place. And then since then, the market is meandering. And of course, there's lots of speculation. What happens now? It could take until summer for clarity on the party leadership. And about the chancellorship, well, there's really no indication what will happen there. It would be strange for Angela Merkel to resign sometime before the next election in 2021, because at mid-year she's to take over the chairmanship of the EU Council. That is, she will be basically the top policymaker coordinating important pieces of legislation, including the budget for the next years. And it's almost inconceivable that another unproven, untested German leader would take her place or take that place sometime in the middle of that mandate. So there are a lot of open questions here.
Let's look at the corporate side. Daimler is set to step up its cost-saving program. Daimler will now be cutting about 15,000 jobs and taking some models like the S-Class Coupe out of the lineup. What's behind this move?
Behind it is the investors' concern about the performance of Daimler. You know, they're bidding with their big cars and their powerful cars, plenty of horsepower on the road. Performance there meets the demands of the customers, but the performance on the financial side and the share does not meet the demands of the shareholders. And Ola Kalenius, the chief executive officer, has only been in office for a relatively short time since the last shareholders meeting. And the next one is coming up. Tomorrow he's to have a financial press conference where he outlines the results and where the company's going. And already in that short period of time, he's had 3 profit warnings. He's had a disappointing presentation in front of investors in November. And there are rumors that people from the old CEO, Dieter Zetsche, are not pulling along with him, that he's having difficulty putting his views through. So now Daimler is cutting 15,000 jobs instead of 10,000, which was the figure before that, cutting some models. I don't know if that will please investors because the profit margin at Daimler is just so unsatisfying for the investors. It's about 4% at Mercedes, and compare that to 5% at Opel, the former problem child. And the former problem child of the German auto industry. And there are many more dissatisfying aspects of the Daimler Group that are worrying investors at the moment. The Daimler share on this news is going up, though it's among the few that are gaining today.
All right, on another development, Brexit negotiations begins this week between Brussels and London. What is the prospect that there will be a favorable deal for both sides by the end of the year?
I think there's very little prospect because the issues are just so complex and there are so many of them. There are basically thousands of points that would have to be discussed in this way. And I'm hearing myself here. If I could have a little less sound on the ear, thank you. The thing is, one of the issues is fisheries. And economically, it's not a big issue, but politically, it's a very charged issue. And there's some back and forth at the moment about that. And that demonstrates that unless there's an about turn in London on the deadline for a deal, you're risking a no-deal Brexit. And with negotiations starting, people are starting to focus in again on Brexit and some of the unpleasant outcomes that could be possible.
All right, Ulrich, the week promises to be good for the market. Let's continue to follow those developments and see what happens. Enjoy the rest of the day.